ComC is your home for buying, selling, and flipping all the hottest trading cards. Their consignment marketplace is home to over 27 million cards across all sports, genres, and eras. With a ComC account, you can purchase cards from different sellers over time and ship them home together later, or immediately reprice them for sale on the ComC marketplace. To stay updated with ComC, please follow them on social media at CheckOutMyCards, one word, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn about offers, promotions, and more at ComC, please visit blog.comc.com. You're listening to the WaxPackHero Sports Card Minute, a podcast where we discuss both the hobby and business sides of collecting. I'm your host, Mike Sommer, and I want to help you buy, sell, and trade your way into a collection you'll love. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the WaxPackHero Sports Card Minute. I am coming off a weekend where I had a ton of fun with the family. It started off on Friday. I took the day off work, and my youngest daughter and I went garage sailing. It's something she really got a bug for a couple years ago, and now she's always wanting to go out to the garage sales with me, and we were able to find some pretty cool finds. She found a couple cheap $1 items to flip that'll be, $15 or $20 items, and I came across this collection of about 150 vinyl records from the 70s and 80s, and was able to work out a deal with the guy at the garage sale for $150 for those. So I basically paid $1 a piece for these, and they're bands like Journey and Boston and the Rolling Stones. Grateful Dead was in there, Fleetwood Mac, Queen. There's just a bunch of great classic rock type albums from the 70s and 80s, and ended up going and buying a record player on our way home because it was something that I hadn't had for a while, and I needed a new record player. So we went to Best Buy, of all places, also the first time my daughter's been to Best Buy, and we bought this record player. We came home, we hooked it up to the stereo system, and she has kind of fallen in love with vinyl and records and the process of taking them out and looking at the artwork. And she's just really having a good time with vinyl, and so was already able to actually sell some of the ones they didn't want to keep. I think there's about 30 of them that I wanted to keep for myself, sell the other 120. I've already made my money back, still have about half of them to sell, which is pretty awesome. I think I'm going to do all right with that, but it was really cool to experience both going to the garage sales with my daughter and then also finding a new item to flip and seeing her fall in love with vinyl early on here. So that was a lot of fun. Thought I'd share that story. Again, it kind of also goes to that opportunity to make a little money to fund your hobby with things like garage sales and buying and selling things on eBay. It's a great way to spend a little time making a little extra money on the side. So we did that. Then as a family, we went bowling. One of the bowling alleys in here at the American Legion actually has a program where kids bowl free all summer, and the parents can also buy kind of an add-on pass for the summer for like $25. And so all you have to do is pay for shoes, but otherwise we get to bowl for free as a family all summer long. So we did that Friday afternoon, had our movie night. It was just a real nice opportunity to spend some time with the family this weekend. Something else that was even more prominent was something that I've been talking about a little bit recently, and that is how disconnected I am from new product releases. When I went into the shop on Saturday, a couple of people asked me if I opened up any Series 2, and I kind of forgot that it had even come out. It's that far off my radar of new product releases, and so they were asking, hey, did you open up any? Yeah, I got some of these rookies, and I'm like, I didn't think there were any rookies in there, or it was getting a lot of buzz about not having the rookies. And like, oh, no, they were short prints. And I have been so disconnected and so disinterested in opening up any new sealed product that I hadn't even dug in or looked into or researched what actually was included, what wasn't included, what things were looking like with Top Series 2. And so it was like kind of reinforced, I'm just really disconnected from new product right now. And, I guess that's okay. Some might say it's not. I think it's kind of all right. Everybody's going to have their niche. Everybody's going to come and go at different phases or different segments of their hobby journey where they're more into the brand new stuff and where they have no interest in it. Right now, I've got no interest in it. Those are some pre-stories to our main topic, and our main topic is another interview, and it's a conversation with Chris McGill. Chris was originally known in the hobby from the House of Jordans podcast, and now he's known as one of the co-founders of Card Ladder. And so Chris and I have a conversation about content creation, about collecting in this modern era, how we go about educating new and returning collectors about what is going on and what are the topics and issues and things that new collectors and returning collectors need to be aware of. It was a real enjoyable conversation. I had a lot of fun with it. I hope you enjoy listening to it. After I tell you about Underdog Collectibles, the online shop run by collectors for collectors that breaks new product every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday night. You can check them out at udogcollect.com to see what they're going to be breaking this week, or you can see them in their brick and mortar shop in Knoxville, Tennessee, where they also have a full selection of singles, wax, supplies, and you can even watch some of those breaks live and in the shop. And if you're interested in getting any of your cards graded, you can work with them because they are an approved group submitter to SGC. You can learn more about that at udogcollect.com. And when you check them out, make sure you tell them that WaxPackHero sent you. Well, today I want to welcome Chris McGill to the show. Chris is the former host of the House of Jordans podcast, the current host of several Card Ladder related content pieces, and also one of the guys behind Card Ladder, part of that Card Ladder team. And so I wanted to bring Chris on, have a little bit of conversation about content creation, have a little conversation about Card Ladder and what our collecting focuses have been recently. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It's definitely an honor to be on the WaxPackHero podcast. I was just browsing the website too before I came on. And yeah, man, I think you're one of the most important content creators and thought leaders in the hobby content space. So very happy to be here with you.
Well, thank you for that. That means a lot to me. There's a lot of us creating a lot of different content out there with a lot of different ideas and perspectives. And so to hear that from you means a lot. So thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. For those who may not be familiar with you, let's go ahead and start by maybe just getting a little bit of your background in the hobby and what your collecting focus has been.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to keep this short and sweet. We could all probably talk about our collecting backgrounds for a long time if we wanted to, but I collected in the 90s, primarily basketball cards. I was a kid then, obviously. Now I came back to the hobby in 2016 and focused on Michael Jordan cards, and then eventually started collecting more modern players, started collecting some Luka cards during his rookie year, moved on to Christian McCaffrey, football running back. Most recently started collecting Nikola Jokic. And then also, I've definitely kind of dabbled to a lesser degree in a lot of other players' markets too. LeBron James, have a few nice cards of his now. Lamar Jackson is a quarterback I really like a lot. I've got a pretty nice rookie card of his. Le'Veon Bell is another player who I've oddly struck up a pretty large PC quickly of. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell where I'm at these days, man.
So you started the House of Jordans podcast several years ago when that focus was primarily on Michael Jordan cards, right? But much like the pivot away from Michael Jordan's collecting being your primary focus, you also kind of pivoted away from doing the House of Jordans podcast as one of your content platforms. Talk to me a little bit about the pivot or maybe the mindset around pivoting both from a collecting perspective and from a content creation perspective.
Yeah. So from the collecting perspective, collecting 90s Jordan cards is great. It's mostly guys like myself who are in their 30s or 40s, who have a lot of nostalgia for the 90s and then went to college and got careers, got families, and then somehow rediscovered collecting. So it's cool. It's a group that I've got a natural fit with, but there's just so many other exciting parts of this hobby too, that eventually when you're around the hobby enough, you go to enough trade nights, you go to enough local card shops, you open a box or two of some other type of products, and you want to enjoy that stuff as well. So that's pretty much all there is to that, is just expanding horizons, I guess you could call it. And then in terms of content pivoting, the House of Jordans episodes, like you were telling me WaxPackHero is now around episode 179 or something like that. Is that about right?
Yeah, right around in the 160s, 170s. Yep.
160s, 170. House of Jordans only made it to episode 43 or 44 or something like that. Because for a long time we just did one episode a month, and I would put a ton of research into it. I'd prepare 10 pages worth of notes for myself and my co-hosts. And, it would take between preparing the notes and then doing the show, which would last for hours, and then editing it afterwards, and then uploading it to all the platforms. I mean, it would take a week out of my life, out of my spare time to do that. So the reality was with House of Jordans, it just, once we started doing Card Ladder, we just didn't have the time, to put in those hours and to do all that research and stuff. Right. So then we tried to so the main content that I do nowadays is, we've taken a hiatus from our YouTube show for a few months, because that takes a lot of work as well. And we just do the crossover Instagram live show, which is Friday nights on Instagram Live. And the content is driven mostly by collectors who write in questions. And so that makes it much easier. The level of preparation there is I just put out a post that says, hey, send in some questions. We get some questions, and then, just kind of read them and riff off of them. The level of preparation for that is much lower. So, and then we record it, we put it on YouTube and stuff. So that's kind of how the content pivot works. Is we just, that's really all we have the bandwidth for right now, is doing a show like that.
There's been a lot of content conversation recently around this idea or this focus on collector driven content. And I think that's great. I think that's a huge need that we've got. But sometimes I struggle a little bit with the idea that this focus ends up landing on high-end collections. There's times where you and Josh and even like Adam Gray, Nat, we hear about all of these high-end cards that are being, these high-end collections that are being built. But as I think about the broad collecting market, I think some of those high-end collections are outliers in the overall collecting landscape, right? And so I was just wondering, from your perspective, where do you see like low to mid-end collectors who love base and inserts and set building and those types of things? How do you see them fitting into that overall picture of the collecting landscape?
Oh, set collectors in particular and insert collectors in particular are the ones who dictate the terms of what matters and what doesn't in the arenas that I like to dabble in. So it was set collectors who, have made the PMG become so important in basketball cards, for example. And, there again, though, I'm venturing into talking about a high-end set, but it wasn't always that way, right? I mean, PMG Reds, commons used to be $50 to $100 for a long time. And people put those sets together and they kind of dictated what was important. There is absolutely a very important place in my hobby landscape for building sets, for opening product, which I think gets overlooked a lot too, is, some of the more aspirational collections out there, they don't really focus on opening packs or, stuff in 5 rows with cards we pulled that we will probably never sell, but just it's fun to have and to look through and to smell and to open the lid and so on and so forth. And, that lane of, to me, that's what the hobby is. That's how I started collecting. That's all I could do as a kid was wait for a birthday or a holiday and hopefully get, a dozen packs. And then once I got them, I got to open all those cards. And then once I have those cards, I got to entertain myself with them for the next 6 months or whatever. So I get my binder, I change the order that they go in all the time. I memorize the backs of them. I try to trade some of them. That stuff is the foundation for everything else. If we don't have that, nothing that happens at the high end makes sense. The only reason the high end is aspirational is just because, most of us have felt that, like, we know cards, we know, which cards are the best cards in which sets, and we know which sets have the toughest pack odds, and we know which ones have the best aesthetic appeal, or we know which vintage cards are the toughest to grade, or have the most difficult centering, or have different registration issues. Like, because we know all of that knowledge builds the hierarchy. And so I definitely find myself being guilty of fantasizing over aspirational collections a little too much. But that, to your point, or to the heart of your question, those aspirational collections don't make sense if we don't have the hobby foundation to go back to. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. As I think a little bit about that, as we touched on it a little bit earlier, actually, sometimes our interests in the hobby change, right? And we look to expand beyond getting the regular base and insert cards to some of those more aspirational cards. And hopefully, as we grow and mature as collectors, we can expand the level of cards that we're interested in. If we're successful from the buying and selling perspective, or the trading perspective, whatever it might be, we can level up as we go, into some of those things. I think the thing that catches me sometimes when I hear some of those conversations about the high end or aspirational cards, and the collectors who are interested in obtaining those, and that's great, can sometimes come off as dismissive of those other cards, or what was thrown out as a commodity card or something like that. And so I was just wondering, is how can we as content creators do a better job of highlighting the segments of the hobby that we're passionate about without coming across as dismissive of those other segments?
Yeah, we can definitely do a better job of it. I guess it on a certain level, you're never going to please everybody. But there, with that said, I am always going to be more of an aspirational collector. Like, I'll always be thinking in my head, and this is going to be repulsive to a number of collectors, and I get it. But I'm always thinking in my head, if I were to just take my whole collection, all of it, all the 5 rows, all the slabs, if I were to take that whole collection and sell it all, what's the best card I could get? I always think about that. I'm always kind of thinking in my head, what is the very best grail of all grails that I could get? And by the way, I never do that, right? I did that a few times early in my career, my collecting career, but I don't do it anymore. But I always think about that. So, like, to me, that's a very interesting, like, I'm just always daydreaming about the big cards. That's just guilty as charged, Mike. But can we have appreciation and the due level of respect to the other segments of the hobby? Yes, we can, and we should. And just because I am more of an aspirational or a daydreamer style collector, that doesn't mean that I don't love, dude. When 2018-19 Prison Basketball came out, and it was affordable at that time, about $200 a box for hobby, Kristina and I built, through a combination of opening product and from buying loose singles on eBay and from doing trades with people on Twitter and stuff, we built in total around 15 base sets. And building those base sets is and then we sold them on eBay, for like $50 a pop or something, oftentimes losing money, because we don't just need all these single row boxes sitting around our apartment, but it's just fun to build it. So that there's just as much fun to be had doing that as there is, spending years seeking out that most desired card. So I'm not quite sure how to do it, Mike. Maybe you have an idea for how to do it, but I'm with you. Every segment of this hobby matters to different groups of people, and it all deserves respect.
Yeah, I think, I would never say that we all have to collect the same way, or that we all have to be interested in all types of cards or anything like that. And I don't even think we would necessarily need to create, we all don't need to create content covering all of those different segments. I think maybe it starts with thinking through the way that we talk about some of those other segments, so that while they may not be segments that we're interested in, we're not dismissive of them, or use terminology that would seem to talk about those collectors or collectors who love those types of cards being less than other collectors, right? Maybe that's where it starts. Let's talk a little bit about Card Ladder. What was the inspiration behind Card Ladder? And you and Kristina and Josh putting some effort into that.
Well, that kind of loops back to the House of Jordans question, because Card Ladder was just the systematization, or the institutionalization of what the House of Jordans podcast was, where it was just finding interesting Michael Jordan cards, and then researching their price histories, and then kind of discussing how those price histories have evolved over time, and kind of getting excited about buying a new card, or wanting to share it with people. And but when you're just one person and you're technologically unsophisticated, it's hard to do much more than just a podcast with that. But Josh Johnson, who's the CTO of Card Ladder and co-founder, he brought to bear an incredible talent stack in the software space, and not to mention the collector knowledge that he has. So he and I had been talking for years prior to our launch in June 2020, and we just even though we collected different players and we kind of came at the hobby from a different approach, he was a bit like, we had some commonalities, but also some differences too. But we both just really wanted to contribute something to the hobby, and we both had like an overflowing cup of passion for the hobby, and it wasn't enough to just make a podcast or do the Cardboard Chronicles episodes. We both really wanted to do more. And so the idea just kind of came about at some point in late 2019 originally, just kind of batting around the idea of putting prices on graphs alongside nice big images of the card and references. These were always sticking points for us, was like, we want each page dedicated to each card to be like a Wikipedia profile, so that you have your price information. That's obviously the bottom line important stuff, but we want a nice image of the card, and we want the population report, and we want references that take you to the relevant Cardboard Connection and or trading card database web pages for the card. And we always made sure that we did all that. And so you can like kind of go on my Instagram page and go back to like 2017, 2018, 2019, and you can see very primitive like PowerPoint / Microsoft Excel looking graphs that were basically like the early foundations for what a Card Ladder profile would look like. I would put a little picture of the card, I'd put the population report, I'd put pack odds if it was available. And that's kind of like the next step for Card Ladder 2, honestly, is like bringing on an editorial team that can really help flesh out some of this information. But that's more of a luxury desire right now. But yeah, man, that's kind of how it started, was just all those things kind of swirling together.
There's so many features that have been added on and built into Card Ladder at this point, from the graphs, the charting, the comparisons that can be done, the watch list features, showcase, and the collection features to kind of track your own collection. Any thoughts on getting back to that low to mid end segment question? Any thoughts on how Card Ladder can be used effectively for folks in kind of that low to mid end segment of the hobby?
Absolutely. So Showcase is a lot of fun. Like there's well over 10,000 cards in there now. And here's what's nice about Showcase. I mean, nobody can come put a comment on your card. Nobody can if you can elect to never be bothered, which is what a lot of collectors want, I think. But you can take pictures of your cards, you can do scans of your cards, and you can throw them in showcase. And then, it's a neat way. You can publicly share the link. And so that's a way to kind of share or show off what you've got in your collection, no matter what it is. And there's nobody who can come along and say anything about it, good or bad. It's just you get to show your collection, and that's it. It's just that the star of the show is the sports card, nothing more, nothing less. So I like the showcase feature as an avenue to, and you know, and you don't have to do it overnight. I've been like adding cards to my showcase collection, bit by bit. Just like a couple of scans a week here, a couple scans a week there, and just kind of building it up. And it's more fun that way, because like when you add a new card, it then becomes like the first card that shows up in the showcase. So that's kind of fun. So like that's a way to do it. And I browse showcase all the time, and I just see cards that catch my eye, and it's pretty neat. So, but I guess, getting down to the bottom line sort of functionality of Card Ladder is that, we're trying to give price information. And so to that end, there's the sales history feature, which is which unlike the ladder database of cards, which a researcher has to build that whole profile out and vet the full sales history for that card going back to 2004 and so on and so forth. With the actual sales history feature itself, I believe there's now over 40 million sales in that feature. It adds anywhere from 60,000 to 100,000 new sales a day. So there are cards being added to the sales history database every day that cover the whole spectrum of prices. And within that feature, you have eBay, you have MySlabs, you have all the major auction houses. And that's a great resource for any level of card, whatever level of card I'm looking at, whether, I'm adding a star power plus of, a semi-star from the 90s or whatever the heck I'm looking. I was just looking at Derrick Rose cards last night because a buddy of mine was telling me about a cool one that he's got his eye on. I mean, there's over 40 million sales in that feature. So hopefully, people looking at any segment of the market, they can find the price information that they need. And that in like, look, obviously if the card sells a lot, you don't need sales history. You can just go to eBay, sold and completed. But there are plenty of cards that haven't sold in the last year or two, or maybe haven't sold since the 2000s. And then that's where sales history really becomes a need.
Card Ladder recently became part of Collectors. And how have you seen this new structure benefit Card Ladder?
Well, first of all, there's a prestige that's conferred upon our humble company and an app by being a part of the Collectors Holdings family of companies. So PSA is a sister company of ours. Golden Auctions is a sister company of ours. WATA Grading, that's the video game grading company, they're a sister company of ours. PCGS, which is the coin grading and authentication company, they're a sister company of ours. So that's a very prestigious group of hobby companies to be grouped with, which, right off the bat, that's pretty cool. And then in terms of being integrated into that corporate structure, I mean, they've given us access to all types of resources, and our task is to most responsibly utilize them and not get over our skis, and just try to properly utilize the resources that we've been given. So right now we recently took on 5 researchers who previously had worked in PSA's research department and then came over to help us. And that's been a lot of fun. It's been quite an experience. I spent a month preparing curriculum to, teach the research work. And I spent another month along with Kristina teaching it. And let me tell you, I once romanticized the idea of being a teacher, and that was quickly dispelled. And I know you have a background in education, Mike, but I quickly learned that I'm not cut out for it. As great as it seemed, especially when I was in college, I always look at the professors. I'd be like, man, I'd love to do that, but it's not nearly as easy or as romantic as it seems when you're just the student watching. But yeah, so it's been great, man. It's really quite the privilege to be part of Collectors.
Over the last few years, we've seen a ton of people come back into cards who are either collected as kids and are now coming back as adults, or some folks who have entered the market for the first time. And depending on the content they find, there's a lot of misperceptions that they can latch onto at the beginning. And whether that's the role graded cards play, or how to buy and flip, or listening to 5 cards you need to buy now type of content, there's so much for these collectors to learn to make sure that they don't have a bad experience in the short run as they're just getting into it. We want them to become lifelong collectors, in whatever segment it is that they enjoy and are passionate about, not just the segments or cards that some talking head content creators tell them they should be buying. How can we as content creators do a better job in helping educate these collectors and maybe help them find their niche?
Oh, man. That's the question of the day right now, in my opinion, in the context of hobby content. I think the key to making content that's going to unlock the lifelong collector and newcomers is content that conveys the intrinsic joy that card collecting and being a part of this hobby offers, and trying to not build hobby experiences around profit. And not to say there's anything wrong with profit. I think there's a place for celebrating and focusing on card price appreciation and doing it in a way that encourages people to participate in that. Like, to give you an example, prospecting in all the sports has always been, a pretty important part of this hobby. And it's a pretty big driver of energy and enthusiasm for new product releases. And that's great. It's fun that people can take a chance on a young player and either go boom or bust. That's cool. That's a fun part of the hobby. But the fine distinction there is that the fun part of it, the fun part of the hobby experience lies in going to shows and making acquaintances at the local card shop and building out your eBay safe search list and seeing your collection grow over time and making connections and relationships within the hobby network and the hobby community and being a part of something exciting. And then the enhanced connection to sports that we get and the way that our sports fandom kind of goes up another level when we also have a little bit of skin in the game through collecting cards. Like, these aspects of the hobby, from my experience, are what make it sticky and are the reason why I want to stick around. If we and so there's lots of ways to do that. Day in the life content, I think, is a clever way to get at that. Me personally, I like more the cerebral style content that that analyzes things to death. That's what I like to do. That's what I'm here for. Overthinking is a lot of fun to me, but that's not for everybody. But the content that we should be worried about, I think, is content that has made the return on investment the focal point and the theme of the card collecting experience. Because really what that's doing is it's building and encouraging hobby participants who their hobby experience is measured by how much money they made or how much money they lost. And that's not a recipe for building long-term collectors who love the hobby for quite frankly the reasons that I do. That's a recipe for building people who will be here when the getting's good, and then who won't be here when we enter a period like we're in now, where there's not as much money or return on investments to be made, or people are even losing money. So I think that's, I think long term is a great word or phrase that you kind of alluded to in your question. And that's something to me. Like, I think the recipe to getting to thinking long term is putting the emphasis on the collector experience. And you know what, Mike, at the end of the day, experience is way better than return on investment anyway. I think that's kind of the hidden gem here, the missing link, is that life is short. Almost everybody in the hobby has a job, they have a career, they have an income. The experience, and there's just, the hobby has so much more to offer, and it can enrich your life in so many meaningful ways besides just the focus on return on investment.
I think those are some great thoughts to wrap up with. Well, tell people where they can find you if they want to follow along to the content you're creating or learn a little bit more about Card Ladder and the other things you've got going on.
Yeah, sure. You can find Card Ladder at cardladder.com, on the Apple App Store as well as the Google Play Store. So it's in both Android and Apple app stores. And there's a limited free version of the app that's still pretty neat. So you can check out the app and or use it on the free level for as long as you'd like. And then as far as me, and then also Card Ladder can be found on all the socials, even TikTok. We are on all the socials. So, and then you can find me on Instagram at Chris_HOJ. That's short for House of Jordans. And then also on Twitter, I'm pretty sure my Twitter handle is at House of Jordans. So those are the main two places where I talk hobby. So that's about it, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. I definitely encourage people to both check out the show and to check out Card Ladder. I have been having a lot of fun using it, building out my collection and sharing it on the showcase as well. So it's definitely worth checking it out if you haven't already. So Chris, thanks again for coming on. It's always great to talk a little bit about the hobby, a little bit about collecting, and a little bit about content creation. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Like the athletes we admire, the Sports Card Shop is changing the game. We're not launching threes, bombing drives, or hitting dingers, but we have built a unique gathering spot for all collectors to trade cards, talk sports, play games, and watch their favorite athletes on the big screens. Yes, we've partnered with Panini, Upper Deck, Leaf, Topps, Fanatics, Pokemon, and others to bring you all the latest in sealed wax and singles. But the Sports Card Shop in New Buffalo, Michigan is much, much more. Our recent expansion brings collectible sneakers, Hot Wheels, and more sports and entertainment memorabilia into the mix. Our new Collector's Cave game room is the perfect place to throw a rip party, bring friends, rip packs, trade cards, play billiards, ping pong, shuffleboard, classic arcade, and Xbox games, all while watching your favorite sport on TV. Visit us at thesportscardshop.com. Follow us on social @_sportscardshop, or better yet, visit us in person to learn about special events, party packages, new products, and everything we're doing for you. The Sports Card Shop, connecting people, sports, and the hobby around the world.
Every time I get an opportunity to have a conversation with Chris, I enjoy it. So I hope you enjoyed hearing that conversation as well. Even though Chris and I's collecting focuses are a little bit different, his passion for the hobby and his desire to educate and grow this overall collecting community, I think, comes through in those conversations. And I respect that a lot. And I also love the fact that he and Josh and Kristina have taken this passion for the hobby and built a business from the ground up to support that hobby and to make collecting easier for all of the rest of us. And so that's something I respect a lot about too, because I love combining both the business and hobby sides of collecting. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Reach out to me at waxpackhero@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at @TheMikeSummer or on TikTok or Instagram at waxpackhero. Reach out, let me know what you think. Let me know other topics or guests that you'd love to have me on, and I'll see what I can do. Well, that is all I've got for you today, so I'll catch you next time.